Welcome to episode number 1 of Quilting on Caffeine. My name is Christine. You can find me over on Instagram at modernlittleme, or you can find me occasionally blogging at www.modernlittle.me. Today, as I said, is episode 1 of this fancy new journey. We'll see how it goes. Today I am drinking a coffee with steamed almond milk, in, I believe, an appropriate mug for the day. And it's not enough coffee for this gross rainy first week of February. I figured that I would start with a little bit of my history and then move on to what I hope to cover here, what I plan to talk about here. So, that said, back when I was 5, no, I'm just kidding. But seriously, back when I was 5, my mom taught me how to sew garments at the time. And I mean, it was the early 80s, so it was nothing good. And then that kind of got pushed aside. I sewed a little bit throughout college. And it wasn't really until I had graduated college, was in Boston working my first job as a graphic designer. I am a graphic designer and photographer by trade. Working my first job that I realized I needed a creative outlet that wasn't on the computer, meeting a creative brief at the whim of somebody else, and I started designing bags. I did that for maybe 3 or 4 years, made some side money, and then just decided that I couldn't work a full-time job and try to build that up. So I put that off to the side, and then I didn't sew again forever, for a really long time, probably 6 or 7 years, I think. It wasn't until, I didn't find quilting until 2010, when we were waiting for our second child to come home from Korea. We had just put in our application, and we knew at the time that it would be at least a year wait to get a match, and then another year wait probably to travel. Both of those ended up being a little shorter, but still it was a 2-year process when all was said and done. And I decided I was going to use that time and make him a quilt. And I just dove in. And I don't think I did any research. I know I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't follow a pattern because I had the color theory behind me. I had the design. Why would I use a pattern? I didn't even go into a fabric shop. I bought all the fabric online on Etsy, and it was spurred, I have it right here. It was spurred by Emily Herrick's design for Michael Miller. So maybe it was 2012 that I started this, because this was what inspired the whole quilt. But it's all just fabrics pieced together in a big Mondrian design. All coastal fabrics. Crabs. Look at those crabs. Oh my god. I mean, look at the soda pop bottles. I just pieced it together. I used 5/8 inch seams because that's what I was used to. I didn't know that there was supposed to be teeny tiny seams. I didn't measure a single thing. I didn't know that I had to square it up at the end. Luckily, I met up with a very sweet long armor who helped me through all of that. Didn't say a thing when she saw my thick seams in the back. Also didn't say a thing when I walked in with a fine corduroy that I wanted to put on the back of it. And it said she was very loving and said, "You have a great eye for color and design. You should embrace that." And so I did. So that was quilt number 1. And then I did start following patterns. My second quilt, my first pattern following quilt, is actually a huge hillside houses quilt that I love to this day. But it took a while. It took a long time, I'm not gonna lie. That's my heat. That's what it sounds like when we're trying to get heat here in New England. And now here I am. It's 2021. I have been sewing stuff together for almost a decade and calling it blankets or quilts. I think I'm starting to know what I'm doing. That was my first finish. My most current finish, I don't know what that is. And my whip here, which is pretty close, is Techno Garden by Carly Porter. She's a long arm by trade. I think that's how she started, and she does a lot of digital long arm designs, which is how I found her. And she's also the author of Graffiti Quilting. And when she showed us her Techno Garden quilt this summer and was releasing it, I knew I had to join in. 6 months later, I actually did it, and here it is. And I kind of love it. But that will hopefully be the next finish. I average about 3 finishes a year, maybe. But in there, I'm also sewing garments occasionally, totes occasionally. I pretend like I'm a knitter, even though I'm not a knitter. But I fake it until I make it. Part of the reason I started this whole little journey is because I have a lot of works in progress whips. A lot, like an embarrassing amount. And I thought maybe if I was holding myself accountable, I'd finish them. We'll see, I guess, right? So I think that's it for now. This was just an introduction. Hopefully I'll be back soon, and hopefully you'll meet me here soon. I guess I should talk about what kind of quilter I am, not just how I started. My aesthetic is definitely modern. I respect all things traditional, love looking at traditional quilts, but I definitely gravitate towards the modern. The more color, the better, unless I'm going for a monochrome palette, in which case bring it on and give me 2 colors and let's call it a day. I am trying to slowly weed out my stash and bring in fabric on a per project basis, although I've just found that causes me to start a lot of things and not actually finish a lot of things. So I don't know how that's gonna go. Maybe I'll embrace bringing in all the fabrics and then have opportunities to do things like this. I definitely want to do 2 stash quilts this year, even if it's just the tops. But that said, I just bought myself a sit-down long arm, which means I should be finishing more than I'm starting. If the logic of I have a lot of whips already plays into this at all. It won't. I always need more fabric. But that's it. For today, at least. I'll see you soon. Thank you for joining me. Quilt on. Drink up.